Hope everyone's doing well. Welcome to the MAGIA Mindset. Today's guest is an absolute delight. He's worked for the Dutch FA, both as a coach educator as well as an assistant coach for the U15 and U16 national team sides. Has also worked for the professional side FC Utrecht as an assistant coach as well as a youth director. He is currently working for US Soccer within the coaching education department as a lead instructor. Please welcome Antal Vergeer. Roll the intro. Antal, thank you so much for joining us. I know, especially for the position you have, you are so busy, especially during these times. Again, thank you so much for putting in the time to joining us. And right off the bat, we want to kind of jump into your story, your journey of how you came upon where you are today.
Okay. Well, it started a long time ago. I'm not going to discuss a lot about it because it's going to be too much, I would say. But just in general, I started working for the Dutch FA, the KMVB. And I did that 16 years. And I did a couple of things there. For example, as a coach educator for a long time, assistant coach for the youth national teams, U15s, U16s, and did a bunch of other stuff as well. After those 16 years, I decided to make the step to be more on the field in a weekly base. And so I went to SC Utrecht, that's a professional club in the Netherlands. Worked there at the academy with the U13s and later on with the U16s and then as an assistant academy director. And then came the moment that US Soccer reached out to me if I was interested to come to the US and work for the coaching education department. And that's where I am right now, and came here late 2017, still here.
No, fantastic. And I think the next thing I want to kind of get into is our development. And I think with this whole coronavirus coming into play, obviously a lot of sports team federations have taken financial hits as well. Decisions have to be made, reevaluations, reflections on how to remap development within our nation. And even the background you're coming from in Holland, it's so key on development as well that you're with philosophy. Now that we're in the US and the way you guys are behind the scenes panning that out, can we first, before get into the philosophical portion of it, discuss the development landscape within the US and kind of the directions we're taking in a sense of with the professional teams, academies, what is that looking like with academies? How is that going to help development of players getting scouted and reflected on to get representing the U15s, U14s, US national senior teams? Where is that looking?
First of all, for me, I'm still figuring out how the landscape in the US actually looks like, because it's very complex. And if I ask a lot of different coaches or people who are working in the soccer industry, they cannot exactly give me an answer on how it now looks like. So I think that's one of the main issues right now we face in the US, is that it's so scattered. It's not a clear pyramid structure in a way, right? So that there's an end goal, and then everybody fits in a certain layer beneath that. So there are different pillars working aside each other, instead of actually having a broad base, and then you step up, and then you step up, and then the pyramid gets smaller and smaller. So now with the DA folding right now, I think the MLS made a really good decision to step in that gap with their development academy situation. So that provides, I would say, at that situation, a good position for players to develop themselves to the higher level. How it looks beneath that, for me, it's still, I'm not sure how it actually looks like. I know that a lot of clubs let their teams play in all kinds of different leagues and competitions, and I think in the current situation we're in right now, I think it's a good time to reflect and say, okay, are we creating the best possible situation for the players right now, and can we go to a sort of a pyramid structure where everybody knows where he or she is at a certain level, so they can, gradually progress to a higher level. So hopefully clubs now think about that and reflect on it and say, okay, do we still want to perform in all those different leagues, or do we connect or commit to one specific league and provide a platform for our players there?
Oh, fantastic. What about, there's so much, like you said, because of we have a unique thing in the U.S. with the pay to play. And I think there are some of the smaller clubs that are not maybe affiliated with a professional team, and they have to set up that pay to play to financially support a professional coach coming in instead of a volunteer parent. This landscape that we have set up right here, because say how every parent is paying and they feel there's an entitlement to playing time, to certain things. It takes away from, and you know it too, Antal, in development, it takes time. It takes time teaching. Everybody's got to trust the process. It might not look pretty at the beginning as the kids are getting started. What is it that approaches you've done in Holland or in Europe that is still not here yet, and we want to kind of get it there so it allows the development to occur organically within the players more?
It's difficult to compare. I can only compare the US with the Netherlands because I live there and I work there, so I know how it exactly runs there. I cannot speak for other countries. But the main difference between the Netherlands and the US is that coaches in the Netherlands don't coach for a living. They have a job and they coach on the side. And that means that they only coach maybe 2 or 3 times a week in the evenings, and they only have one team. That's it. The benefit of that is that you can give all the players all the attention they need. And we're not coaching to make a living out of it. We coach because we really like to coach, and we also have another job that provides us an income, so we can do this on the side. A lot of people in the US actually coach for a living, which is a good thing because it provides money for you and your family, so that's a good thing. But to maintain a certain amount, to earn a certain living, a lot of coaches coach a lot of different teams. On the courses I run the last couple of years, I had coaches who coached 4 or 5 teams. For me, that is difficult to understand, because how can you coach 4 or 5 teams and actually develop those individual players within the team if you have, 80 to 100 players you need to take care of? At some point you get brain dead, I would say, because it's so time consuming. It costs a lot of energy, and at the end it hurts the quality of what you do as a coach. You cannot perform at your best for back-to-back sessions every night. It's just impossible to do, let alone coach a lot of teams during game day, right? So if I had coached one game on Saturday, I was exhausted. I was mentally drained based on all the things I've seen and the things I did with my players. So if that's something we could fix in this country, I would say that would benefit the development of players as well. And I'm not denying people to have a job, of course. But can we create other constructions that it's not just, hey, you coach 4 or 5 teams or 3 or 4 or 5 teams, but you do other things within the club and you get paid for that as well. In the Netherlands, only a very small percentage of coaches actually make a living out of coaching. I worked at a professional club, and I had a very low income because there's just not a lot of money in the youth game in the Netherlands. So we see it as something we really love to do. But I had multiple roles within that club that provided me a certain income. So perhaps clubs can think about as well, instead of hiring a coach whose coaches 4 or 5 teams, maybe that coach will coach 2 teams, but is also responsible for the development of the coaches in a certain age group, or is also responsible for creating a certain curriculum for an age group, whatever it is. So you give them other tasks that they can actually perform during the day when they don't have to be on the field, and then they only coach maybe 2 teams, so you can actually work with those teams and develop them to the full potential.
It's so crazy how you say the youth team coaches that are affiliated with the professional teams in Holland don't get paid that much, and it's so true, because, and it's crazy because the amount of love and support for that sport it is in the country. It's the same way in Iran as well, where I played, is the senior teams, the technical staff and the players get the main attention. They're probably the full-time gig, but anything out of that pyramid, it's not financially supported as well, because the owners got to pick and choose what they want to kind of go towards. What I would kind of wanted to transition to, I think some people don't understand how much of a business machine, money machine it is in America compared to the rest of the world in the youth game. You know, I think everybody thinks, oh man, everybody's professional on the youth side in the world, where it's not really the case. So in the US, the landscape that really is difficult for a lot of coaches, if we can change it, but if we can't, how do we get creative in the NCAA, in the tournament formats? I'm kind of leaning towards the periodization, obviously, is the periodization, because it's the tournaments are targeted towards business, money, because there's no way you can tell me 5 games in 2 days, it's development. You know, that's insanity. I mean, if I'm trying to play at the highest level, 5 games, I mean, 1 game, even having 2 games in 2 days back to back is difficult. So I totally feel, so I want to kind of get into, is there a way to change that in the NCAA, how they go from August to November, and then the tournaments, how it's compacted? Or if it is what it is, and you're put in that situation as a coach, how do you get creative with periodization to help at least prevent injuries and maximize development and performance?
Yeah, so there are 2 different things. You have the youth game and you have the college game. And the college game is decided by the NCAA, right? So that's something you have to deal with. I know that there are conversations at this point. I'm not quite sure how those conversations are still ongoing based on the current situation. But before the pandemic struck, there were conversations that to extend the college season, because all the coaches, or most of the coaches, also see that the current situation isn't beneficial for developing players, but also for the health of the athletes, right? So there's a huge number of injuries in the college game, and that's because of the amount of games you need to play in a very short amount of time. And everybody understands that players cannot recover from that, so you're just going to increase the injury risk by that. So hopefully that conversation will continue, or maybe it's still ongoing. So college can extend the season, and that would, I would say, benefit the players a lot. And I think the coaches now actually can have more time to actually develop their team, instead of just making sure they're healthy and fresh as possible, so they can perform for the next game again. Yeah, in the youth game, it's about the philosophy you have as a club. What is it you actually want? And if you say, we want to develop players, you need to think about, okay, what does that mean for the things we do? And of course, 1 or 2 tournaments a year, you can deal with that. And depends on how many games you play in a tournament, of course, and how long those games are. But if you go over those two and it becomes 3, 4, 5, 6 tournaments, and you don't have a very big roster, you're not developing players anymore. You're just killing players, and that cannot be the idea of developing players. So playing more games doesn't mean you're actually going to develop players. I would say if you can create a situation with playing less games but train more, where you can actually control the load and the intensity of your training sessions, that will be way more beneficial for player development. But again, I understand also the balance between gaining money, because we also need to make sure we pay our facility, we have travel costs, we need to pay our coaches. But are there other ways than just organizing tournaments to gain some money as well? And you can put that money in the development of the players. I don't have the answer right now because it's a very complex situation, of course. But for me, it always starts with, okay, what's the philosophy of the club? And is the club run by an owner? And is the owner's idea, I don't care about development, as long as I make money, it's okay? And I'm not saying it's wrong or right, but then I don't want to be part of the club as a coach. If the club is saying, okay, we actually care for the development of players, and that means we look at the load we give players, how much training sessions, how much rest between games and training sessions, and of course, occasionally you're going to have your back-to-back game, you're going to have your tournaments, but if it's not too much, you can manage that.
No, I mean, that's unfortunately the reality that kind of we have to deal with, get creative with. The thing is, what I even, want like parents and just the people in America to understand is when you're playing a game, how many times is that one player touching the ball compared to when you're in a training, the ball to player ratio, especially if they're younger, because if they're 8 years old and they're more focused on playing those tournaments and getting those, how many touches are they really getting on the ball? So I totally agree. I think you hit it on that point. My kind of thing that I want to kind of throw it back at you is my vibe is we have a lot of different members, meaning you got the NCAA, you got USL, you got US Soccer, you got MLS. There's so much pyramid, especially I think we're the only country that doesn't have promotion relegation. And you got the MLS. I was even thinking if the USL can, and then because the uniqueness of NCAA, how if you can't make it pro, at 18 to 22, you're playing at a decent level. Why couldn't that kind of be third division? And those players that are on those NCAAs are playing third division, but the institute's not paying them. So they don't violate the professional contract, but they play against good level, because imagine that Stanford University, if they win their third division, they get promoted to second division, possibly play against professionals if they can keep up, but they don't pay their athletes. And it allows them to fall into the cycle, because maybe if they're 22 or 21 and they transition to the MLS, or they have ambitions to go to Europe, they're not falling behind. Because I heard a lot of my ex-teammates, they played at UConn, Division One. They went to Germany, third division, fourth division. And they asked him, where did you play? UConn. Okay, what national team? No, I was playing and I got to UConn. The UConn's one of the highest universities. He's like, yeah, but that's nothing for us. You need to have professional, by the time you're 22, you got to have some professional gaps year round, those kind of cycles. So it's still kind of looked down upon if you go to university, and then after university, you want to decide to go professional. What I'm trying to say is there a way of, within that development cycle, if a coach is working with that athlete, they want to get those athletes in. Maybe until the NCAA is not changed in that, how can the NCAA still continue that development so they're not falling behind that pace? Is there ways around that, or?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, right? So as long as is if you don't extend the season and you condense everything in that amount of time you have right now, college players, and of course there are always going to be exceptions, but the majority is never going to pick up at the professional level because that gap is too big. Because if you, for example, as a player run through the system of a youth player in an academy, and so you're not going to go to a college team, but you stay within that, so you have a year-long developmental cycle, year in, year out. It's going to be more or less difficult to actually make the step to the under 23s, for example, and then make the step to the first team, because you're in the same cycle. You get a lot of developmental moments. You got a lot of training sessions. You got a lot of games in for almost a year round. That will help you develop yourself up to a higher level. In the college game, there's just too many gaps in between. I think at some point, coaches can only have your 8 hours weeks or your 20-hour weeks where you can only have so much time on the field with them. Yeah, that's everybody understands that being not on the field is not going to help you take that next step to the highest level. And you can see it also with the MLS draft right now, right? So still college players are getting picked, but I would say only for number 20, 21, or 22. So yeah, what can you do to increase the gap or to decrease the gap? Is to extend the playing time for the players and the training time for the players. More hours on the field, more quality hours on the field without being injured or the high risk of being injured. That's the only case that can help players to get there. And if that in the future would lead to that the college competition will be merged into the professional, so you create an extra layer in the pyramid, I would say that would be even more beneficial because now you compete with better players, better teams.
No, fantastic. That's great stuff. Antal, now I want to kind of get into your coaching style. Kind of let's if we can break down the style of coaching maybe that you have become fond of and philosophy, and how do you incorporate it? What's the step processes with it? Like what I want to get at is it understanding the style of play first? Is it incorporating your philosophy, and then from your philosophy understanding what players you have? Or do you flip it and say, this is the players I have now, based on their personal roles, how do I incorporate my philosophy? How do I incorporate my style? Kind of breaking down how you would put your attention to detail in that aspect.
Depends on the situation you're in. So, for example, if I would be working in a youth club like I did in the Netherlands, for example, if I take, say, Utrecht as an example, they have a style of play. So I need to adapt to that. And of course, I can bring in my own personality and I can tweak a little things, but the main message of the style of play, that's my job to develop players within that style of play. That's very easy. If I would work on the professional level, so for example at USL or MLS level, some clubs probably have their own style of play, and so I need to adapt to that as well. But probably then the club looks for a coach that fits the style of play. If the club doesn't have a style of play, then you have to create one, or maybe you already have one. But then you have to take in consideration what the quality of the players is and what the culture of the city is where you're in, right? So that what is it the fans want to see, and if they want to see, just an example, high pressing, always attacking on the opponent's half type of game, and you're just gonna sit in and you're gonna try to counterattack, it's gonna work for a while, but at some point the fans are not gonna be pleased by that. So it's multiple variables you need to take in account to develop a style of play. It's your own vision, what is the club wants, what is the culture of the city where I'm in, or the part of the country where I'm in, and that incorporates the fans as well. And all those together and you need to mold into a style of play that fits your players, so you can hopefully win games.
No, that's such a great point you bring up, because a lot of people, especially with U.S. soccer education, you want to build out of the back. They've done build out lines to promote that. But sometimes you don't have the players to build out of the back, and you're doing it, and you're losing your customers because they want winning. And sometimes the coach maybe is not educated or doesn't understand the moment how to balance that up, because winning is the system of buy-in. Winning is the system of buy-in. I think there was an interesting thing Guardiola said was, I went to Bayern Munich, and yes, I want to play off the back, but I have to be winning it as well to have them buy in. If I was playing out of the back the whole time, I'm losing game 2-1, 3-1. I'm not going to have a job either.
Yep.
You know? So, and I know playing out of the back sometimes is misconstrued. I think some people don't really understand sometimes the purpose. They just do a goal kick playing out of the back, knowing that it's not really moving the opponents out of place. It's unbalancing it. You're moving shapes and that. Can we kind of get into the real element, the real purpose of building out of the back, and kind of how do you find that balance of winning and incorporating a system that gets you the result, but also playing that attractive brand? And maybe at times you have to adapt based on your opponent. If we can kind of touch those bases.
Yep. Again, first of all, depends on what the club wants. And also it depends on the age group. So if I want to play in a certain way with the U13s and I lose games, okay, it's not a big deal for me, because I know it's at this point it's not about winning games yet. That's for later on when you get 17, 18, 19. Okay, now it's about how can I actually win games. Doesn't mean that I don't want them to win games, of course, because within the game I still try to help them to have the best outcome as possible. But I can also make choices for the sake of the development of players that could potentially end up us losing the game. But I'm okay with that because I know it has a higher purpose at the end. But you refer to Pep Guardiola. Yeah, he works on the highest level, and there's just one thing that counts, and that's you need to win games. It's as easy as that. And if you don't win games, they're gonna fire you. So you need and he has the luck in a way that he can have players that can also execute his style of play, of course, and it goes with ups and downs because he doesn't win everything. Look at this season, so he's a lot of points behind of Liverpool, but he has a philosophy. But I believe that he is also flexible within his philosophy when it's needed. And especially at the highest level, of course, you have a higher purpose in how you want to play. But the game gives you what the game gives you. And you need to deal with that as well. And if that means that in certain moments in the game, you need to sit in because the opponent is now pressing you and they're on the upper hand, then you need to sit in and make the best out of that and make sure you don't concede a goal. So you can stay in the game. So hopefully you can execute your style of play later in the game again. So, and that's. But if you're at the highest level, like Barcelona, like Liverpool, you can enforce your style of play up to the opponent because you have the best team, you have the best players, etc. If you're on the lower teams, yeah, you always need to adapt because 9 out of 10 times you're not gonna be the team that has the upper hand. And so you also need to adjust to what the opponent is doing. But there's always a basic philosophy you have as a coach. Okay, this is what I envision in how I want to play. Maybe I'm not there yet. So what are what's the flexibility I need to bring in right now? So hopefully if I get the time, that's the second question, I can actually get to my desired style of play I want to play with my players. But for a lot of coaches, they don't get that time to actually implement that because they already get fired because they don't win enough games at this point.
And I loved how you said flexibility and adaptability. For you as an instructor in U.S. soccer, as well as coaches within the game, how vital is it in your roles to be flexible, to be adaptable. If the students or the fellow coaches that you are educating, maybe those numbers don't show up, something happens, there's rain on a field, you have to create a different environment. Whatever you had on the game plan, you have to scratch it, reset it. How vital is it? And do you have a moment that you actually went through it and this is what you did to get out of it?
Well, what you can do is, so basically, what you're saying is, how can I be flexible as a coach in different circumstances? So I prepared for something, but you already know what I've prepared is probably not going to happen because the situation on the field is always going to be different. I accounted for 16 plays, but only 13 show up. So what do I do right now, right? So you need to have contingency plans so you're not caught up by surprise. So what we teach, for example, in the B license is that the starting point is I want to develop my style of play. So I need to periodize my training sessions over a longer period of time to gradually develop my style of play. So for example, if you want to build out of the back in a certain way and you want to train that, what kind of exercises within your training session can you now create to develop your style of play and mainly to develop your principles, your team tactical principles. So what we try to teach them is to create a range of exercises or activities that could be in a progressive way that you can now use at each moment you think it's needed. So you start with small-sided, you expand, you make it a little bit bigger, you make it a little bigger, and in the end, if you have a roster of 16, you play 8v8. So within, let's say, 2v1 and 8v8, there are a lot of exercises you can create for yourself to develop the principles within your style of play. So what I normally did was I had an idea what I wanted to do for this training session, but I always took in account, okay, what if I have 2 players less, or 3 players less, or 4 players less, or 5 players less? This didn't mean I created 5 or 6 different training sessions, but by thinking about it and maybe making some notes, I already had in my mind when I was on the field, okay, 4 players less, I already know what I wanted to do. I need to modify this and this and this, and I'm good to go. So it comes with experience as well, but you need to think about it before it happens. If you think about it, actually, when it happens, you're too late. So I already had 3 or 4 different plans in my mind to know, okay, if it happens, these are the things I need to do. And the funny thing, though, is that I was the U16 coach at Utrecht, and across my desk was the U17 coach. What I normally did was an hour and a half before the training session, I started to create my training session. But always 5 minutes before I went to the field, U17 coach said, well, I got 2 injuries. I need 2 players of you. And sometimes it even happened when I was already on the field. Then the assistant of the U17 came to me, we need 2 or 3 players for you because we have some issues. So I needed to be really flexible, knowing that at some point, this U17 coach is going to ask me a couple of players. So I'd start making my training sessions an hour and a half. I had the big outline, of course, but in detail, I only did it 10 minutes before I went on the field. Or 15 minutes. Because I already had a plan in mind. Then I knew, okay, I have so much players. These are the activities I'm going to run. But I also need to think about if he comes to the field and takes two of my players again, how will I adjust to that? So, preparation is the key.
No, I think that's a great story as well, and I think I love the way you kind of broke it into what the stuff you had to be flexible on and adapt on in those roles. I want to kind of get into one of my favorite sections of the interview and the conversation is the mental side. I think it's so overlooked at times when a coach or a player that wants to be involved, if it's even with the U15 highest level or with the senior team highest level, at any level, there's got to be a mental side you have. If it's mental toughness of confidence, if it's professionalism, if it's your discipline, if it's your determination, and I wanted to kind of I know you're on the education side, Antal, but I've known that you've worked on the professional aspects of coaching, and but even on the education side, what is a quality when you look at a coach or even players that you've evaluated that you're like, he's going to be special, he's going to have a long career, he's going to be this because he's determined, he's this, he's so and so, he's so and so. What are those qualities that you're like, they have it? And if you have any stories that kind of you're like have change your mind of, you know what, you can still make it with these qualities too, if you can share with us.
Yeah, in the end, you never know who's going to make it or not. Yeah, and then again, that's the difficulty in talent identification. You cannot predict the developmental process of players because it's non-linear. It goes up and down, backwards, up again, 5 steps backwards, and it's all over the place. And it has to do with so many different circumstances in their lives that can hinder or accelerate the learning process. And the younger you go, the even more or less predictable it's going to be if players are going to make it. But you could say there are a couple of things that a player needs to have a higher chance of actually making it to the highest level, and that would, for me, would be intelligence. And it doesn't mean they have to be, do a university education or something like that, but soccer intelligence. They need to understand and read the game. They need to think ahead. And I can prepare my players for that by creating exercises where they actually need to think about certain things ahead and read and understand the game. So that's one. They need to have a growth mindset. So they need to believe in the fact that they can develop their abilities and their intelligence. And that's something I can do as well. If I constantly praise my players on how good they are and on the outcomes, I'm imprinting a fixed mindset. That's what they start to think about. Okay, coach is telling me that I'm so good because I probably have a lot of talent. If I praise my players based on the effort they put in and the plan they put in place, I create a growth mindset that they now see, okay, yeah, based on all the time and effort and I have a plan in place as a player, how to become better. That will help me take it to the next level. And then, of course, there are still other things that can have a huge impact: family circumstances, friends, getting injured or not. All those things at the end will say yes or no to getting to a higher level. But game intelligence is an important one, and of course you always need to execute your decisions, so a certain skill level of ball mastery and all those things you need to have as well. But for me, that's not the most important thing. For me, the most important thing is, can you read and understand the game and make quick decisions, and do you have a growth mindset? Are you willing to put time and effort in your development? If not, then it's going to be very difficult to take it to the next level. And then it will be difficult for me as a coach to help you as well, because if you're not willing to step up, then at some point my role stops as well.
Oh, fantastic. Antal, I got basically 2 more questions kind of set up for you. The next one's very vital, especially during this unique time with this pandemic that occurred. It's forced unemployment. It's forced recently some riots coming into play as well. It has really created a scene that you really picture in movies. I mean, it has been some hard visuals. You always make sure that hopefully everyone's doing well on the other end, but it is a lot of people have been impacted. If we don't get so much into the political side, we stay in the world of soccer side. For aspiring coaches, families, aspiring players, a message during this kind of timeout, kind of moment of reflection as a whole. What are the qualities you recommend to kind of build a good foundation so then you're catapulting into the future on a good path? Because I know there's a lot of coaches probably thinking about how is the U.S. soccer education going to look if I want to continue my education. Is it going to be online transitioned? Is it going to be kind of like a classroom where the universities have gone, where they're going virtual with it, especially on the higher licenses of the B's and A's? But overall, what do they do to kind of plan? I think this is the perfect time of planning. So when you're out of it, you're kind of set to go checklist to get there.
Yeah, that's a difficult one because there are so many unknowns, right? So as a department right now, as U.S. Soccer Coaching Education Department, of course, we're looking at the future of coaching education because we had to cancel a lot of our courses in the last couple of months, and we don't want to do that anymore. We want to provide people's opportunities to keep on learning. But of course, we also have a couple of principles and philosophy that comes with learning as well. So we're looking at blended learning right now. So how can we mix in person with online? So when, for example, when the pandemic hits again, so we get another flare up, how can we still keep on continue our license levels and don't have to stop that process? And that's challenging because we really believe in skill development and not in knowledge development. And you need knowledge to develop your skills, of course, but online is most of the time is just providing knowledge, and you can work with all kinds of learning activities, and work with small groups and learn from each other. But the in-person moments when you actually are face-to-face with your candidates and you can guide them in the process and you're on the field with them and you can intervene and you can ask them a question and they can immediately act upon the feedback they've given, that's the best way of learning. But we're also realistic that the virus is not going to leave for a while. It's going to stay here. We don't know how long. But at some point, we want to start up our courses again. And that's why we're looking at blended learning right now. So how can we find a mix between in-person and online? But most likely, we're always going to have at least a moment in person because we think that's so vital for coaches. And of course, you need to have the availability of players, because if you cannot coach players, you cannot develop yourself as a coach. You need to be on the field. All those webinars people do, and I'm part of that as well. It's knowledge, but if you cannot apply the knowledge in a situation, you will lose that knowledge again. So that's why the combination of that is so important.
I think you couldn't have said it any better. I think there's a purity about the game of football that right now we're taking advantage of the technology, but during the time you were growing up as a player, I'm talking about the purity of being out and about. I think we're at times losing the in-face interaction. And Antal, you've probably met a lot of coaches that they send you documents and papers. You're like, dude, brilliant. But they cannot coach a lick on the field. They just can't coach in person. They get intimidated. They can't move. They don't know where the guidelines. And there's a beauty of, there's geniuses that are on the field practitioners, but they don't know how to use the laptops, use the technology, use the certain things. So I agree with you on the webinars. I think we go to an extent, but there's a sense of practical coaching, practical development that we can't lose. If we make U.S. soccer education all virtual, there's a side you lose that, I think it's very important that, there's a presence and demeanor when you're going face to face with a mentor or instructor or on the field with players that you need as a coach. I think before, back in the day, they didn't really care on what you write. It's what you sell to the players. How do you motivate them? How do you set them up in sessions? So I totally agree with you. And I hope with this, it catapults virtually, but also allows us, with the growth of virtual learning, the balance of practical to combine, and something great comes out of it together, obviously with a balance. My last question for you is your favorite team of all time, your favorite player of all time, And I always remind all our coaches, mentors, players that come on the podcast is it can be from any sport, because I know when someone's a child, they touched with this one sport mentor because maybe they met them in person or something that really catapulted their career. And everybody has a different story behind it. The reason I say in sport, because I want to ask you your favorite team of all time, your favorite player, and why those are your choices.
Yeah, let's start with the player. I cannot make a decision between two players, so I'm gonna say there are two players. The first of all is Dennis Bergkamp, because he's brilliant. The things he comes up with in a split second, it's for me it's just genius, and I really enjoyed watching him play because he is from the era that I grew up as a kid with the game, and he was up and coming at that point. And the second one is Iniesta. And the reason for Iniesta is that he has, I think, 20 pairs of eyes in his head. He is the best player ever that can read the game and makes decisions and can execute those decisions at the highest level possible. And the simplicity, how he performs it, that makes it complex, of course, but it looks so simple. For me, I'm not as good as he was, of course, but a type of player that as well. I don't want to run too much, but I want to dominate and dictate the game, and he's the best of doing that. So those two players, the team that has the most impact on me, and it's I don't know if you put the banner behind you on purpose there, but it was Ajax 1995 when they won the Champions League. And the reason for that is that something that we have never seen in the Netherlands, a team that played like that with a coach as Louis van Gaal, with a lot of young players and a lot of Dutch young players. And the style of play he implemented with that team was just phenomenal to see. You told about that in the end. You need to win games to make sure that people buy in. In the Netherlands, it's slightly different. It's okay to win, but you need to win in a beautiful way. And if we win but we don't do it beautifully, then people are still angry and pissed off because it needs to be beautiful. And I think that was one of the examples in '95, that team that played very beautiful soccer, but also was able to dominate and win.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And I want to kind of quickly touch on it on the academy I've set up with MAGIA Academy. It's mainly a movement. And the movement of it's basically the philosophy and understanding of Ajax and Barcelona. And, even the history behind it, what Johan Cruyff, even when Guardiola said, you should have watched those 70s Ajax team. They were playing modern football like it is today. So I couldn't agree, because even that your Iniesta selection, these are not athletes. They're artists. They're geniuses. Johan Cruyff, Iniesta, Ronaldinho, Messi, Bergkamp. They touch a ball, and if you put a paintbrush on that ball, their feet, it's art. It's a masterpiece. It's a Michelangelo. And I think the purest that when you look at it like that, sometimes the winning takes away from us creating those. And the Iniestas, the Ronaldinhos, the Messis, the Maradonas, the Pelés, they were, even Johan Cruyff said it, how many hours did he train on the streets? How many was in Ajax's training? They were kind of, with the imagination, they had a balance of creating freedom. As a coach, sometimes we want to joystick it, where we should sit back, recognize those players and say, let them take over your session too.
Yep.
Push their buttons and let them take over. I run into so many coaches that they want to take the credit. They want to grab their arms, tell them exactly how to shoot. And instead, maybe that way they shoot, figure out as a coach how to develop his version of it. That's how his body moves. And that's a deeper understanding about it. And I think because maybe soccer or football is not the number one sport, we have coaches going through the education system without really observing and watching the game at the highest, and they're basketball fans, they're football fans. It's great to be those fans, but soccer is a different sport. It's a beautiful game where it doesn't require athleticism. You can be a genius here, and you could probably, how many steps do you take on a field? They're like talking about Xavi. Just look at how many steps he takes, but how many times does the ball connect to other opponents? So there is a beauty, and that's why I truly appreciate even the way you dissected the game and the way you're even evolving the education within our country as well. And I truly believe the game is growing within our nation. I just think it's very young still. I think it's just young. We're just playing catch up, but it is heading in the right direction. And I think one of the main things is because the unlimited resources that are in the US. So truly appreciate that. It feels like these conversations about the beautiful game can go for days.
Yep.
When you have passionate people that love the game, that want to teach it. But I want to kind of allow you to close it with sharing with us anything you have plans in the future, you want to get out there for the fans, for the audience to know about, and have you close this out.
Well, what I hope for a lot of coaches that they do at this moment is that they actually reflect on their own behavior. Now that you're not on the field anymore, and hopefully we return back soon, what you did in the past, was that sufficient to develop your players? And it's a little bit of soul searching, I would say, and be honest with yourself, because a lot of coaches say I'm player centered, but actually they're not, because like you mentioned, they're not allowing players to have freedom in the game and make their own decisions, of course within a certain framework and structure, because otherwise it becomes chaos. But it's not about what I want as a coach. It's about how can I facilitate the game for my players so they can make autonomous decisions and they become critical thinkers, because the game is so unpredictable that players cannot rely on the coach, because you cannot coach 11 players every second of the game. Players need to make the decisions, and you as a coach need to provide them a clear framework. That's why a style of play and certain principles within that style of play is very helpful, because that creates that framework. But within that, it's the responsibility of the players to develop themselves and find their own way of executing those principles. And I'm just there as a coach to facilitate that and praise them and give them tips if needed and provide them a little bit of feedback. But I'm not there to tell them what to do and how to do it every single second of the game, because that takes the fun out of it. And in my belief, that's why a lot of players actually quit the game, because of the coach, and not because they don't love the game anymore, because they don't like the coach anymore. And that's something we really need to reflect on and look in the mirror and say, okay, what kind of coach do I want to be, and how do I need to change myself?
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Antal.